Oh, hello, hi friends. My name is Jen Grieves and I've been living with type 1 diabetes for nearly 30 years, which is a long time. And for the past year or so, I've been on this, which is the Omnipod 5 automated insulin delivery system. It's also known as a hybrid closed loop system. Prior to this, I was on a different version of the Omnipod that was not semi-automated. I'm not going to get into all of that today because what this video is for is to show you the process of changing the pod itself. Now, this is the pod, which is a patch pump. This contains the insulin. You wear it directly on your body, but it needs changing every 3 days, so up to 72 hours. That day for me is today. So I thought I would walk you through the process of changing the pod, refilling a new one with insulin, and show you how that all goes down. If you're thinking about a pod or you're thinking about an insulin pump in general and you want to know how this all works or how long it takes, I've got you. Obviously, before we get started, it goes without saying that none of this should be taken as medical advice. This is not a replacement for training when it comes to an insulin pump therapy system or an insulin management system. You need to take training from a healthcare professional. I just thought it might be helpful if you're curious about these things because there's a lot of jargon out there when it comes to diabetes technology, and it can be hard to find out really how this all works in a real way. So here we are. Speaking of jargon, I do actually have a video on an introduction to hybrid closed loop systems, what this is and how that kind of semi-automated part works. So if you want to check that out, I will link that below. But let's get into the pod change. So as I said, as long as there's still insulin in the pod, each pod here lasts for 3 days, up to 72 hours. And I've got mine set that it will start beeping 1 hour before that 72-hour window is up to remind you that you need to change the pod. From that 72 hours, once you've hit that limit, you get an 8-hour grace period where you can still use the pod and the pump as normal, and you can still bolus your insulin. The automated delivery function still works if you're using it. But once that 8-hour window is up, an alarm enters your world, and she is hard to forget. It's very loud, it's impossible to ignore, but more importantly, the pod therapy system itself just shuts off, so you absolutely have to change it at that point. I've got a little bit of extra time before I get that first 1 hour warning. However, I'm going out for dinner tonight and I just don't want to be dealing with a pod change when I come back from dinner and I'm ready to go to bed, so we're being proactive here. These are just all the things you have to think about when you live with type 1 diabetes, as I'm sure you'll know if you have anything to do with this condition. I would say normally this takes no more than 2 to 3 minutes. Now, I've been on a version of the Omnipod, the patch pump, the pod, for over 10 years. So I've been changing these every 3 days, more or less, for the past 10 years. So I've pretty much got the process down. The thing that took me a while was actually being able to pull insulin from the vial without air bubbles. But again, you have to go through training to be able to do this. Don't take my advice. This is not an instructional video. That is something that your healthcare professionals should help you with. But once I got that down, yeah, the whole process became very smooth indeed. And helpfully, the controller will walk you through each step by step. So when you are in your training, you don't have to remember everything. This is actually super helpful, and if you're on any previous version of the Omnipod, you will know as well what that kind of looks like. So let's get into it. So if I unlock my controller, because this pod isn't far off expiring, this is the current home screen. That's not the normal one. The normal one is, ooh, this one. Oh, hello, 4.2, which just gives you a general overview of where you're at on the day. But because my expiration is coming up, this is what we've got. And this is actually quite helpful because it illustrates what I was just saying. So we've got the exact number of units left in the pod. We've got the expiry date and time. And we've also got the settings here where, as I said, I've got it set to 1 hour warning before the expiration. So it hasn't started beeping yet, but it's coming. You won't miss it. And from this screen here, it clearly says change pods. So we're just gonna hit that. This is all touchscreen, which is nice. And there's a lot of like confirmation buttons just to make sure, because obviously you don't really want to deactivate the pod if you aren't intending to. That's not ideal. So we're gonna hit deactivate pod. So it just takes a second. and then you get that noise, if it will focus on the screen. This is really hard to do. So once you get that noise, that means that the pod that I'm currently wearing has been deactivated and it's no longer in communication with the controller. And it's telling me that right there. As I said, this controller is so super helpful. No active pod means I'm not getting any basal insulin, so we're gonna need to change it. So I hit that button there that says set up a new pod. And the screen I then get is an instructional one telling me to fill a new pod with insulin, and you have to fill the Omnipod 5 with a minimum of 100 units. I think the old versions of the Omnipod were slightly lower, maybe 85 units, but for the Omnipod 5, as it says on the screen, minimum of 100. Obviously, I want to fill each pod with enough insulin that the pod is going to last for the full 3 days, and I want a little bit of a buffer as well, because I might have a carb-heavy day. I might get excited by some ice cream at some point, who knows? So I want to make sure there's enough insulin in there to get me through the 3 days, but I know that generally I don't need the full 200 units that this pod can hold, and I'm trying not to waste the insulin. So I am pretty much aware of roughly how much I need over the 3 days. So for me, it's somewhere between 125 and 150 units that I will fill this pod with. So just to make sure you've got that, that's what you get on the screen. So you're filling a new pod with at least 100 units and you're listening for 2 beeps. Here's my new pod. So they each come in this little packet with their own syringe. This is the pod itself. So you've got this plastic safety cap, and this under here, once you lift this off, this is the adhesive underneath. And then there is this little hole here, which is where you place the syringe to fill the pod with insulin. So inside this is my little syringe. So screw that on, pull that off, and as you can see, that's what I mean. It's 200 units max, but I'm not gonna fill it up to the max because I just don't need to. Okay, so I've got my vial of insulin here, turn it upside down, and then we pull the insulin into the vial. And I do it sort of gently to try and avoid all those little bubbles. The big bubbles at the top are completely normal. We're gonna get rid of those in a minute. Well, they're normal for me. I don't know about you. Maybe you've got this down. So I over pull to more units than I need because I know I'm gonna squeeze some out at the top and get rid of those air bubbles. So we're at 150 there. That's pretty smooth though. I tap I tap the syringe to get the air bubbles to go to the top, and then if we do this, the air bubbles should come out, and I can check by tipping this up and down, and yeah, there's no air in there, so I'm happy with that. And I've got it somewhere between 125 and 150, which is the right amount for me. So now that I know that there's no air in there, I can put it in the pod. So I like to put it this way up, put the sharp needle into the pod and push down. And that's the 2 beeps that the controller was talking about. So I know then that the minimum amount of insulin has been inserted into the pod, and on the controller I can hit next and it's going to communicate with this pod. It will only communicate with one pod at a time. So I'm basically telling it to look for a new pod and connect with it so that it's communicating with this new pod. We're going to hit next and it's doing exactly that, communicating with this pod, trying to find it. Hello. And it's found it. So it's now switched the screen to priming. So those clicks are this pod getting ready to be used to deliver my insulin, which is kind of handy when you live with type 1 diabetes. There we go. So it's primed the pod is ready to go on my body, and let's see what we've got on this screen, which I definitely can't read backwards. So with every screen, it's just walking me through the next steps. So it says, clean site where pod will be applied, remove tab and check cannula, remove paper backing, check pod and apply to site, and then tap start to insert cannula and begin your basal delivery. So with each of those steps, there's little links so you can figure out what that means for yourself, or you can check if you're not quite sure. So if I press check cannula, that screen pops up and it's just telling me the information I need to know to make sure that the pod is as it should be and everything is looking good. All of these bits of information aren't anything to worry about. They're just safety measures. Obviously this has got to work. It's really, really important that it works properly. So these steps are all in place for you to kind of verify. Oh, she's talking too much and taking too long. It's telling me that I need to get this on my body because I don't have any basal insulin currently going into my system. But yeah, if you're not sure about anything, obviously speak to a healthcare professional. But I don't think I've had any issues with pod changes. Yeah, more or less. I mean, 10 years worth and I'm still using the Omnipod. So here we are. Right, so I'm going to snap the safety cap off and then check that the cannula is not already sticking out. So the cannula is the bit that goes into your skin, and then that's the bit that will drip the insulin through. And I am going to take the adhesive off, but first I'm going to clean my new site. So sterile wipe. I'm going to be running around a lot this weekend. I've got 2 gym classes booked, so I will take that into consideration when I'm deciding where to put my next pod. I've got a few preferred sites. It's all personal preference, and Omnipod does have a pod placement guide on their website that they suggest where you put the pod for better insulin absorption, etc. It's all for you to figure out what you feel comfortable with, your preferred sites. For example, I don't wear them on my arms. I wear my glucose monitor on my arm, but not my pods. I just prefer it elsewhere. I use my torso a lot, but because I'm going to 2 gym classes this weekend, I'm actually going to put this on my back, just above my bum, because my gym trousers will help secure the pod in place. I know I'm going to have quite an active weekend, so these are just the sorts of things I like to consider. If I'm wearing a fancy dress one night, I might think about where to place my pod to sit comfortably underneath that dress, etc. It's all for you to kind of feel your way through. So I'm going to clean this side, let it dry, let it air dry, I believe is the recommendation. Again, not a medical professional. So now I can take off the adhesive shield. That's the pod and the adhesive there. So you don't want to touch this before you actually put it on your body. So I will show you, I've just popped that on there. You best believe I'm wearing joggers to film this video. Comfort is key, business up top. Okay, so I've stuck that on there, straight on, and then I kind of just do that to make sure it's stuck down properly. And then we just hit start. And then it comes up with this screen. Again, another security step, is the pod securely in place? So I believe for me that it is. That feels good, and I've stuck it straight down. It feels secure. So I'm going to hit yes, and then it's communicating with the pod again, and you'll hear these clicks. That one means the cannula's gone in, and that's it. As you can see, I didn't flinch. It's kind of like an elastic band just being pinged at your body, but that big ping at the end, the big click, that's the one where the cannula's gone in. So you'll get a few clicks and then that slightly louder one. So the screen says, is the cannula properly inserted? A pink colour at the top of the pod confirms that the cannula is inserted properly. So there's a little square just at the top of the pod. Again, another safety measure. We love it. We love to feel safe and secure with our insulin delivery system. So I'm going to hit yes because everything's good. And then it says switch to automated mode. And that is because with the Omnipod 5, you can use it in automated mode or manual mode, so not semi-automating my basal insulin delivery. And that lovely sound is signifying that everything is as it should be, and I'm good to go for the next 3 days. So now when I open the controller, it's not telling me to change my pod. It's gone back to the default home screen, which is my blood glucose reading, which it is taking automatically from my Dexcom CGM. That is in essence, the hybrid closed loop system. You've got the controller, you've got the algorithm, you've got the pod, and then you've got the CGM, and they all communicate together to do the automated part. But as I said, we're not going to get into that today. That is a lovely number. She's not going to stay, but we'll take it while it's there. So that's kind of it. Obviously, that was a lot longer than a normal pod change because I got really granular there with the steps, but I wanted to show you the whole process and also show you how helpful the controller is at guiding you step by step through the entire thing. I think it's super clear and really easy to follow, so hopefully that's reassuring for you as well. And yeah, if you've got any thoughts, comments or questions, let me know. If you want more type 1 diabetes chatty vibes, then do consider subscribing. I hope you've enjoyed this video and I'll see you soon.